So, have you ever wondered which study plan is actually the ultimate key to academic success? Well, so did I. So that's why I decided to embark on a journey, a quest if you will, to try out all the popular studies technique out there. From Pomodoro technique, mind mapping, and good old cramming. I've put them all to a test, and here is the result. Hey dear fellow learner squad, today we're diving deep into the world of study techniques. But here's the twist, I didn't stop at just showcasing the pro, I also went deep into the juicy cons too. So in this eye-opening video, we're going to unravel the mystery of study technique, explore their strengths and also their weaknesses, and also discover which one can truly superchange your learning journey and which might be better left in the textbook. So guys, are you ready to join me on this epic exploration of the pro and con of study technique? Well, grab your note and paper, hit the subscribe button, and let's dive right in. The first one I want to talk about is active recall. Now, active recall is a study technique that involves actively engaging with the material that you're trying to learn or remember. Now, instead of passively reviewing notes or textbook, you're actively testing your memory by trying to recall key information without looking at the source material. Now, this process helps to strengthen memory retention and is an effective way to study for exam or to learn new information. What are the pros for active recall? Now, first is improved memory retention. Now, active recall strengthens your memory by forcing you to actively retrieve information from your brain, which enhances long-term retention. Now, this is just trying to say the more you use an information, the more it's likely that you remember that information for a very long time. Just like how you'll be using your ABC for almost the rest of your life, and you will also still remember it for the rest of your life. Now, I said in my previous video that whenever you read an information and you keep reading over and over again, now the neurons that are associated with storing this information become stronger and they become closer together. And the stronger and the closer they are, the more better that you're able to retain this information in a flash. So the more you keep reading something, the more your neuron that are associated with this information builds up and becomes stronger, and then by enabling you to remember that information as quick as possible. Now, the next one is efficient learning. Now, it focuses your study time on the most important and challenging concept, making your study session more efficient. What this means is that the more you read an information, the better understanding of the information you get. Now, this might sound strange, but if you keep reading the information, I can assure you that 3 out of those 4 times that you study, you're going to gain new information every single time you read that information. So whenever you're reading the information over and over again, it gives you a better understanding of what is in the context rather than just memorizing those information. And when you just memorize this information, on the long run you won't actually remember those information because they are not actually stored in your head as known concepts. They're just stored as like a short-term concept. The next is better understanding. Now, active recall engage you to understand the material thoroughly rather than passively skimming through it. Now, the next is self-assessment. Now, it serves as a self-assessment to helping you to identify area where you need to further study. Now, this is really important and it's really helped me because each time I read an information and I try to recall that information and I notice that okay, this is the part where I cannot remember and this is the part where I can remember very well. Now, this gives me a good idea of the part where I need to focus more on. With active recall, you're able to know what area that you're good in and what area that you're not actually good at. The next one is versatility. Now, you can use active recall for various subjects and various type of information. Whatever the information is, you can actually use active recall to make that information stick on your brain. We'll talk about the cons. Now, one is effortful. Now, active recall can be mentally demanding and may require more effort compared to passive study method. You have to keep trying to remember this information over and over time, and it is really going to take a lot of effort from you. It's not just something that you can just do now in just one study stuff. It's you need to keep reading that information over and over again for you to be really good when you're doing your active recall. The next is time consuming. Now, it might take more time to review and test yourself on the material compared to simply reading through those notes. Now, I said in my previous video that most people really hate active recall because it's really time consuming. It takes a lot of your time. Now, the time that you should have used to start studying a new subject, you would actually have to use it to remember an old subject that you have read before. So it's really time consuming and cumbersome to most students, and they don't really like to do it. But that's just one of the cons in active recall. The next is initial frustration. Now, it can be frustrating at first if you struggle to recall information, but this frustration typically leads to better learning on the long run. Now, like I said before, it's really discouraging when you try to recall information that you have read about 2 to 3 times and you can't actually recall those information. It's really frustrating and it's really discouraging, because a lot of students are just like, okay, I've read this thing like 5 times, how come I'm not actually still able to recall this information? And they become frustrated. But the truth is, it's really helpful. It makes you know where you are actually weak and where you are really strong, and it focuses you on one particular point. Now the next is that it requires discipline. Consistently using active recall requires discipline and commitment, which can be challenging for most students. Especially, this is actually something that happened to me even till now. I feel really discouraged, and it's sometimes I just feel like maybe I should just keep active recall and just just do something else. But the truth is that it really helps, and it will make you retain information for a very long time. Now the next one I'm going to talk about is spaced repetition. Now, spaced repetition is a learning technique that involves reviewing and practicing information at increasing interval over time. Now, it's designed to optimize brain retention by presenting material just before you're about to forget it. Active recall is where you're trying to remember those information without the source. You're just trying to remember it from your brain. But spaced repetition, you're actually using the source to read those information over and over again. What are pros of spaced repetition? Number one is improved retention. Now, spaced repetition enhances long-term memory retention by enforcing the learning as the right interval. Now, the next is time efficient. Now, it focuses your study time on the material you're struggling to remember, making your study session more efficient. Now, the next is that it is ideal for memorization. Now, it's particularly effective for memorizing facts, vocabulary, and other information heavy subject. And this is to say that when you keep reading information, or if you keep reading information over and over again, you are bound to retain that information for a pretty long time. So what are the cons of spaced repetition? The first is complex to implement. Setting up and maintaining a spaced repetition system can be initially complex and time consuming. Now you need to set time to read a particular subject, which might actually not be easy to actually introduce, especially if you have a study timetable or something like that. So it's really complex to actually put those things in your study timetable. The next is that it is not ideal for all subjects. Now, while it is excellent for memorization, it may not be the best approach for understanding complex concepts or practical skills. Now, the next is initial overwhelming. Now, when you start, the review load can feel overwhelming as the system tries to determine your retention level. Now, the next is that it can feel monotonous. Now, some learners might find the repetition nature of spaced repetition boring over time. Now, sometimes it will happen to me. Sometimes reading information over and over and over again, it's really boring, because something I've read before and I have to keep reading it again and I have to keep reading. And sometimes the reason why I get boring is because sometimes you might still remember almost all of the information, but still yet I still try to review those information, because in as much as you remember this information, if you leave it for a pretty long time, there is a probability that you might actually start forgetting this information. So it can be really boring to most students to keep reading something over and over again. So it's not really applicable to all students. If you've been on the quest for a study method that can actually supercharge your efficiency, you have probably come across or heard of Pomodoro's technique. And I've actually also talked about Pomodoro's technique in my previous video and how to actually use them to study. Now, if you want the video, I will link it down in the comment section, and you can actually watch that after you watch this. So what are actually the pros of Pomodoro's technique? First of all, is it enhanced focus. Now the Pomodoro's technique, which is a 25-minute work interval, forces you to concentrate intensively, helping you to tackle tasks more efficiently. The next is reduce procrastination. Now, breaking your work into short and manageable segments can help make daunting tasks feel more approachable, and also this can help to reduce procrastination. Now, procrastination is one of the key factors or the biggest factor why a lot of students don't study nowadays. And if you're actually a procrastinator, I have a video that I'll link it down in the description box below for you to watch, and this will actually help you step-by-step guide to break out of those procrastination zone and make you study for a longer period of time. Now the next pro is that it improves time management. Now this technique, which is the Pomodoro's technique, encourage you to track your works and break, and it can actually help you become more aware of the time that you're spending. Now this is actually something that really happens to me a lot. I do tend to take breaks when I'm reading, just not to cause burnout. And one thing is that each time I take a break, I might tell myself, okay, I want to take a 5-minute break. Now if I don't set a time for myself, sometimes if I don't set a time for myself and I'm like, okay, I want to just take a break, I would find out that I'm actually going to spend almost an hour. But with Pomodoro technique, I know the amount of time I want to spend. I want to tell myself, okay, I want to spend 10 minutes, and that 10 minutes is my 10 minutes because I'm using the Pomodoro technique, and it's going to make me track my time and make me not sway out of time. Now, the next is that it helps to prevent burnout. Now, regular breaks help prevent burnout, keeping your energy level up throughout the day. Now, the next is the con of Pomodoro's technique. Now, the first con is rigidity. Now, some students find the strict 25-minute work and 5-minute break format too rigid for their workflow. Now, sometimes that is really true because sometimes I just need more time to. There are some things that I actually want to do with my break, and due to the limited amount of time I have for Pomodoro's technique, it's not really enough for me to do that stuff that I would actually want to do. So it's really, really rigid, and it's not really meant for everyone. The next is content switching. Now, frequent breaks can lead to more content switching, which may not be ideal for tasks that is actually requiring deep concentration. Now, yeah, this is really, really common a lot, especially when you're actually in the mood. It actually breaks the mood of reading. The next is that it's not for everyone. Now, what works for one person might not work for the other. And the Pomodoro technique might not suit everyone's work or study style. So it's not necessary that you actually have to use Pomodoro technique, because it might not actually work for you. But this is where we're going to end the video, guys. I would really, really love to talk about more study technique, but for the sake of time, I just picked the 3 most important study techniques that has been widely advocated, and I just want to talk about their pro and their con. So have you tried any of these study techniques that I've actually talked about, and what has been your experience with it? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and let's keep the conversation going. So guys, if you want me to make a part 2 of the other study technique, just gently tap the like button and also write it down in the comment section below. Oh god, seriously guys, it's been I think 2 months that I've been trying all of this study technique, and it's really taking a toll on me, like seriously. Now I think I will appreciate my own study technique and just stick to it. So guys, if you really, really like this video and you really, really appreciate what I do, just smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.